Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of the Sports Sentiment. I'm your host, Nick Urias, and we are back talking college basketball. Thanks for everyone for joining whenever you may be, whether you come tuning in live, as we're recording this, or if you're, just coming along in the late night hours on a Friday or even the Saturday morning before the college hoops uh Mountain West slate over 100 games on Saturday. So good to be talking to everybody wherever you may be, if you're in San Jose, out there in New Mexico, or just around the country. I know we got ourselves a widespread audience uh, out here. So, again, always appreciate the love. But hey, what we're going to be doing here today is, just doing some housekeeping on our end. Normally, don't record these videos on or just these lives and just recording podcasts on a Friday, but we had some availability today. San Jose State's at home on Saturday night. They'll be taking on the New Mexico Lobos. If you recall, that game last year was an absolute thriller with the Spartans and the Lobos out there at the Provident Credit Union Event Center. And we're going to see if, we get that same result or, the same, I guess, close, tight battle that we did a year ago. So we're going to have ourselves a guest, Ricky Thompson. He's going to come on and, just preview Lobo basketball. He's got himself a podcast pretty much dissecting the Lobos and he's been doing it from start to finish this year. So very interested to get his insight on just the Lobos thus far and, just where the trajectory, his opinion and his trajectory of the Lobos going forward. And, we'll see what that matchup looks like. Of course, we're going to nosedive into the matchup there for JSU. That just kind of SJSU until it really wasn't, unfortunately, right? I mean, this was a 3-point game at halftime. And, this was, we had Jonathan Conness on the podcast and we were kind of saying, hey, this has always been a tight game over the years. 36-33 at the break. SJSU, I mean, they hit 8 threes in this game and 5 of them came in the first half. And, we've seen this kind of bombs away approach just with Tim Miles over the years and his teams. Of course, his rosters are always built around terrific shooters. But, a lot of times live and die by the three, especially against these teams where they're kind of an underdog in, right? We've seen it on the road, and that's kind of been the trend, I would say, the past 3 years now, where, these teams are so good at home in the Mountain West, where really the only time SJSU is kind of hanging around in these games on the road. I go look back at that game, a month ago now at Utah State, where they hit like 8 threes, 10 threes in the first half, if memory serves me correct. And they only had themselves like a 3-point halftime lead, which obviously Utah State's going to probably most likely be in the NCAA tournament. And, there's only been one team from center there. So, many teams are going to win there, but, that's kind of approach that you has on. It was kind of way here in this game, right? Kobe Garland, I mean, we've talked about his return where they're just trying to get him back inserted into this thing. They've been trying to ramp him up significantly here. Interested to see if he's in the starting lineup tomorrow because he's came off the bench the past 2 games, but just 31 minutes for him. You could just tell he's really not back in game shape yet. And I know he's been practicing a ton, but even so, like the offense just looks so much more fluid than in what it did, when he was out. So even though he's coming off the bench, I still do think that's significant that he's returning. This team needs Japhet Mundi back. It's really that simple for the Spartans because he's missed 8 games now. And, one win in that 8-game span has been against the Air Force Falcons. So, and you were down 4 starters in that game, but anyone that's monitored Air Force, they're without their coach, and quite frankly, their team just hasn't had a pulse since, they had their MTE when they had, IU Indy and, Alabama State and SIU Edwardsville. Like, and those are some bottom teams in the entire country. So, uh, you know, it's a league win, but still, this team just from this final score, losing by 31, it was one of the more just quite frankly embarrassing second halves that I've seen in the event center in quite some time, because Miles has always had those teams competitive over the years, even if it's in your own building. But man, Boise just dropped the hammer down in the second half. And, when you see 56 paint points by Boise State, credit to Leon Rice. He knew he's adjusted. He's adjusted successfully 3 out of the last 4 years here in San Jose State. I would probably say since they've been competitive here, because I throw the Tim Miles year 1 window just completely out the door. But since he kind of had his own players, right? This is 3 in the last 4 years where Boise has kind of had a close game at halftime, and then they've just completely, adjusted, won by 2 possessions, or in this case, they just completely throttled the Spartans. I have to say, Boise's depth has been very impressive. They're in action tonight at Grand Canyon, which I think is going to be a very fun, one of the probably the more entertaining Mountain West games we have all year, just because Boise is so hot right now. But when you get this Ben Boom kid who's played in 2 conference games, and he ranged anywhere from 23 seconds to like 5 minutes in the non-conference games, he's all of a sudden becoming a contributor, almost like how what Pearson Carmichael was last year for Boise State. Kind of that emergent underclassman that just rises up to the occasion and just kind of opens everything up for them, because you can see he's athletic, and 11 points in 10 minutes, I think, is noteworthy for a guy coming off the bench. They didn't really need anything from like a Dylan Andrews, really. A Javian Buchanan only dropped 6 points, but Boise's had themselves a really nice luxury of, resting players versus Air Force, resting players versus San Jose State in the back end of these games. And Drew Fielder's really starting to emerge right now. Andrew Meadow had himself a good performance for Boise State. So Boise, I think, is on the rise right now, shooting 59% in that game on Tuesday. But I have to say, for SJSU, even if you don't get Yafet Mundi back on Saturday, I think Marcus Overstreet gave you some really quality minutes, especially in that first half. I mean, this guy was feeling himself, taking, body blows against Drew Fielder and not shying away, because this guy, I would say 2 months ago, was not that player. I mean, Coach Miles couldn't even play him, right? And, he's almost had to just kind of utilize 25 minutes out of necessity, just because you can't really, in the Mountain West, there's so many terrific front courts where you just kind of have to throw these guys out there, even if they're young and raw and are going to have to, learn and grow through it, right? So Overstreet's definitely been one of those guys where, you look back at his, box scores and performances and the game tape from 2 months ago, I think has, really gotten better. And that bench was energized on Tuesday. That was, an energetic bench, and, they were hyped up for the kid. So, of course, Marcus Overstreet, the transfer from Mercer, he's came in and, learning under Yafet Mundi, but Mundi, they're going to need him, and they're going to need him in this type of game against the Lobos, who are a very physical front court. Melvin Bell, only a point in 29 minutes. I'd like that to be better. I understand his role has changed. And, Jermaine Washington, I mean, he chuck up a bunch of threes. I mean, he made 50% from 3 in this game. But I don't know, like his shot selection was just, Boise played him really well. After he made that first 3 in the second half, I thought they played him really well. So, and I saw Douglas Lankford. I'm not the biggest plus minus guy, but I only saw it because they gave me the final box score at the end of the game. But I've never seen a player register 2 minutes of gameplay and have a -9 on the stat sheet. So I thought that was a little wild. I'm trying to picture his minutes in my head because he only played 2. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the plus minus stuff. It is what it is. But hey, I mean, we'll see what Kobe Garland looks like coming back from Saturday. Kind of third game reacclimated here. The third game in a week for SJSU. And, we'll see, if this team could, I guess just kind of be competitive in some of these games because we just really haven't seen it. We have a guest on for today's podcast. And I've hopped on his podcast, and finally we kind of get him on ours just to kind of talk SJSU and New Mexico. He was in the building for the upset last year at the event center, and I'm very excited to bring him on. We got Ricky Thompson. He's the host of the Cherry Heat Check podcast, strictly a Lobo basketball podcast. He's doing some terrific things over there. So we're going to bring him on in here. Ricky, thanks for coming on, my man. Good to be talking to you once again. The Cherry Heat Check podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. I know you've been pretty much, previewing games, giving your thoughts after the fact. I just, first and foremost, thanks for coming on. And I guess, what are your thoughts on Lobo basketball thus far? Because it's a new regime, of course, brand new players and personnel, but you got three really just high upside freshmen with Urias and Jake Hall, and the 23-year-old freshman and Tomislav Buljan. What do you make of the Lobos here thus far? Because they were kind of middle of the pack in this thing in the Mountain West preseason polls, and I have to say they are right in the hunt for at-large territory for this NCAA tournament come March timeframe.
Yeah, Nick, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, always to chat it up with you. And as you mentioned, being at that game last year with a totally different roster led by Donovan Dent, Nelly Jr. Joseph. But I remember UI and Rocco Miller, and I think your SID chatting before the game, and we could kind of feel it in the air that we all kind of said we could feel the Lobos might let this one get away, and that it did. you know, Little did we know that the Lobos would go on to almost beat Michigan State, and finally make it to the Sweet 16. Of course, Patino, Dent, and all their players exit. At that point in time, I never thought we would be here 6, 8 months later looking at a team that's in a similar position. They're right there on the bubble again under Coach Eric Olin, who came over from UCSD, myself included, and the fans, analysts, media, we're all kind of skeptical about this roster, right? Because when you look at it, they don't look like a group of guys you would pick at the YMCA. But when you see the type of defense that Eric Olin and staff wants them to play, it's really getting its teeth right now. And they're top 20 in Ken Palm adjusted defensive efficiency right now. And that really showed on the court against UNLV a couple nights ago, where they embarrassed Josh Pastner and the Rebels on their home court. And that's really been the Lobos' calling card all year, is their defense has been a few steps ahead of their offense, as progressions usually go, learning new schemes. Um, but if you would have told me the Lobos would be, in second place in the preseason, I wouldn't have believed you. In my own rankings, I think I had them at fourth, and that was just being generous because I want people to tune into my show, and I don't want them to think what I really thought about the roster at the time. But now I can honestly say I think the Lobos are in position to challenge for the conference title in the regular season. Of course, San Diego State looking like the strongest team and the most depth, but they having injuries. The three players you're talking about, Tomislav Buljan, um, the Croatian sensation transfer postman that did not play in that first game, if you recall, against San Jose State, where the Lobos won by, I think, 20 some
20
plus
plus 23, I
three,
believe.
I
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah.
for those of
23.
you that haven't seen Bullion yet, he's kind of like a wrecking ball that plays really well off of ball screen action, where he doesn't have to necessarily use post moves. He likes to catch the ball, make quick decisions, get offensive rebounds. But believe it or not, Nick, in the last game, he knocked down 2 3-pointers as well. So he's really a forward playing the role of a center in the United States. But he's in my eyes, an all-conference player right now. The other two freshmen you mentioned, Urias from Prescott, Arizona, playing the six-man role, one of the most effective defenders in the conference, playing that point of attack position at the top of the head of the snake there. And he only standing at 5'10", but you don't notice it when he's playing because how he's able to get downhill, how he gets up under his man on defense, and then his decision making is just getting better as time goes on. Where early in the season, his end of drive decision making was a little sketchy where he would turn it over. Now he knows where he's going with it and looking for a shot. But I think the most surprising to me has been Jake Hall, who you mentioned, the freshman out of San Diego area, leading the conference in three-point makes with over 2 a game, I think averaging about 15 in conference play, standing about 6'4", gets a lot of his shots coming off the ball. And he likes to curl, he likes to flare, he likes to run the dribble handoff, and he likes to catch and shoot. So he can shoot it from anywhere at any time, Nick, is what I'm saying. So he's been really fun to watch and reminds me of, I wouldn't put him on the level of Steph Curry off the ball, but he does his best Reggie Miller imitation out there trying to get open. But you also have to watch out for his head fakes, slow Euro steps, and just ability to score other ways. So team really loaded with young talent on top of transfer Dayton Albury and a few other veterans. And they're looking very strong and continuing to get better to my surprise.
Yeah, no, when I talked to Dayton Albury at Media Day, and I think a lot of people were probably thinking like, hey, this is probably gonna be Dayton Albury. We're gonna run him down in the ground, play him 40 minutes. That has really not been the case. And I think that's kind of maybe I guess probably been a surprise to everybody involved here because, you know, I feel like, maybe there was, some positive signs here for Hall. Maybe unless you were the coaching staff and the players in the room, maybe you nobody had this emergence coming. I feel like the fact that he's shattering Lobo freshman records. I think he's up to like 8 20-point games this year, which is a program record for a freshman. There's just some crazy stats that really back up, and obviously his game does the talking. I remember, just going back and, watching that VCU second half outburst, which I thought was a scheduled loss for the Lobos at the time, just looking at the games on paper, especially given, what VCU was last year and, them coming to the pit. I thought they would be playing with revenge. And, Jake Hall just really put his team on the back in that game. So, I mean, it's amazing to see, that trio of freshmen, what they've all been about. I had a whole lot of respect for Eric Olin and just the hire as a whole. Him coming over from UC San Diego and, really building it from the ground up over there. And, this has been a smash hit hire. I mean, year one, I think everyone's got to be satisfied with the year one, I guess, results here thus far. Obviously, you still got a month and a half left of the season. So, I mean, you can't crown them just yet. I have to say, Ricky, usually we would be talking about, the quote unquote flat spot or, the trap game with all of those Patino teams. And usually would Patino always get one every, where obviously last year was last year when they went to SJSU with that loss in an upset fashion. I look back at a game like 2 years ago it was when Air Force came into the pit and shocked the world. I feel like you'd always get one. I don't really see that with Eric Olin just because he's always had his teams, ready in a bunch of these spots. I mean, the only, I guess, maybe game where you're kind of maybe shaking your head a little bit was the game that you were at the pit with Alabama State from the SWAC, right? Where, they kind of came sluggish. In the final 4 minutes, they kind of go on that crazy outburst. So I don't really see it here as far as, I think New Mexico is going to be ready for this game. I think SJSU, I mean, they have a lot of people's attention just because of how many points that they score, even though their defense kind of stinks and it's been horrendous all year. I don't know. I feel like you're going to have a level-headed group here with New Mexico, but I have to say, the event center, you've been in that building before, Ricky, doesn't pack a lot of fans. And, I feel like when you get freshmen and, a guy like Dayton Albury who's played in that building before. I mean, it could. I wouldn't be, I guess, shocked if it gets a little rocky here in the first maybe 10 minutes or so, just given the fact where they kind of have to adjust, just given all the environments that they played in this year. I'm interested to just get your thoughts on that perspective with Olin having his team ready.
Yeah, I think the floor that this team has is a lot higher than those Patino teams, meaning they don't really get too low. And when they start to feel it slide, they always seem to have a response. So I do surprisingly feel more confident about this team not having one of those type of games, even though the star power, of a Jalen House, a Mashburn, a Den, a Nelly is no longer there. But these guys just play so well together, and even if Jake Hall or Bullion is not filling it up, they have other guys. I think they have 4 or 5 guys near double figures scoring right now. But I think for the Spartans, if they're able to hang in there, like you're saying, the first 10 minutes of the game and potentially get the Lobos in foul trouble, I think there's an opportunity because the Lobos bench is playing a lot different on the road in conference play than they are at home. Going into this last game against UNLV, the bench was averaging 35 points at home and only 20 points on the road in conference. And that's really led by Tanet, who you mentioned, but also JT Rock, a big man transfer from Iowa State, who stands at 7'1", but oddly enough shoots about half his shots from 3-point range. Well, guess what, Nick? He has made 1 3-pointer on the road all season, 0 on
Wow.
the road in conference play. So he does not shoot well on the road from deep. So I think if Tim Miles can find a way to get Bullion in foul trouble where JT Rock has to play extended minutes, that's going to be an uncomfortable situation for the Lobos because they're going to struggle to find offense, I think, without Bullion. And he's capable of getting in foul trouble. He's been there a couple of times alongside Albury. So I expect the Lobos to have a double digit victory, probably cover the 15 or 16 point spread, whatever it comes out as. But I do think Tim Miles is a really good coach that will have a game plan prepared, right, in case it is close. And I think Colby Garland had over 30 in that first meeting. Jermaine Washington is able to pick up speed, and I think they have enough to hang in there like they did versus Boise. The question is, can they do it for 40 minutes, like you were mentioning with these injuries? And do you have a timeline on when Mundi is coming back yet?
I don't know. He's been viewed as questionable. I haven't really checked the injury report today just because I've been busy. I know they dropped that preliminary report. So I mean, well, if he's warming up before this game, he's probably going to play. It's kind of just been deal, but because he hasn't warmed up in any of these games. He's still in the gray sweatpants and the blue undershirt. So in the past 8 games, I personally believe he kind of has to play for, if the Spartans want any chance of winning, just because, the drop off between a sophomore in Overstreet and, their 2 freshman bigs. I don't think they're going to be able to hang with the guy like Bullion, quite honestly, and especially since Bullion didn't play this last game. So it's not like, any of those Spartan bigs really know what they're going up against, right? So, I mean, I think Bullion is like top 3 in rebounds per game as well. And, the Spartans got out rebounded by 19 boards in last game versus Boise State. So, I'm with you. I thought you brought up a really good point. You got to get Bullion in foul trouble. I remember SJSU did this exact thing last year. They got Nelly Jr. Joseph with like 3 fouls in the first 12 minutes of the game, and it
They did.
completely flipped the game upside down, right? And, all of a sudden, you got to rely on the second unit a little bit more. And then, it was just one of those games where the second it kind of goes off script and, you throw the crowd in there and everything else in between, the all of a sudden the game's up for grabs. I will have to say though, Ricky, I'm interested to see the crowd turn out myself. Just because they are doing a ticket giveaway for Super Bowl week out here in they're doing a Kaylani, she's an R&B artist. They're doing a ticket giveaway during the game, I believe.
Is she gonna
Uh,
be there?
I don't know if she's gonna be there. I highly doubt it. I I imagine she's got better places to be than an SJSU men's basketball game on a Saturday evening. But doing a show out here for Super Bowl week, and they're doing a ticket giveaway. I know they're doing $5 beers and $2 hot dogs. So you never
Okay.
know. More students might be out there more than usual. So you might surpass your 1,500 attendance average on a night like tomorrow night. But I don't know. I'm very interested to see this one. You already know we both monitor the Mountain West, and I think you'll be very interested just to see, both of these teams going forward, because I think we've seen San Jose State frisky, especially at home. And, that first round of the Mountain West tournament game is always a little fun with them, just because they're a gigantic underdog and they're in it until the final 2 minutes. Or you get a coin flip game like last year versus Wyoming, and they're up 15 and they almost blow it, right? So they're very, they're a volatile bunch, especially when you get them out of that event center. And I'm very excited for the matchup tomorrow. And as far as the Lobos is concerned, you're going to have the Mountain West tournament crowd, right? You've seen it. I've been to that Thomas and Mack Center in the Mountain West tournament enough years where I know New Mexico, San Diego State, and we haven't seen it yet. That GCU crowd is going to be electric because those kids will travel. They traveled to the WAC tournament down in Henderson for several years, and they were the only people there. So I imagine that student section is going to travel along with the Utah State crowd. I'm very interested, just what's your take here on New Mexico going forward beyond this game. Obviously, shout out to Timothy in the chat. He says Utah State in the pit on Wednesday night. That's a pretty important one, I would say. So, I mean, I guess what do you make here of UNM? I know you want to see the data point here first, here on Saturday, but let's just say you get out of town with the win. Obviously you have to take care of business here on home court, right?
Right. And so I want to get your take on this before I go here, but Utah State and San Diego State play this Saturday, right? And that's really going to be a game that's going to depend if they're tied for first place or not. So UNM will play Utah State after that, as you mentioned, hosting Utah State this coming Wednesday. Then they have Boise State at home, a Boise State team who's quietly won 4 in a row, a Boise State team that did beat the Lobos earlier this season at home. So Lobos go back home after this for 2 tough home games. Then they have to go to GCU, Nick, and probably one of, if not the toughest road atmosphere that we've seen so far. So the next 3 games after the San Jose State game are really going to tell me more about New Mexico and where they're going to end up playing. 3 of the tougher teams, of course, ending at GCU after that spurted. They got San Diego State again in the pit later in the year. New Mexico lost by, I want to say, 2 or 3 points to them in Viejas a couple weeks ago, where New Mexico had chances to win the game. San Diego State just made the plays. So I think New Mexico will keep pace with Utah State here. But they, like you're saying, if New Mexico gives up a loss to any team other than Utah State or maybe GCU on the road or San Diego State at home, they can kiss their at-large berth goodbye, right? And that's just the way it goes for any Mountain West team at this point in time, for the most part. If you're not winning the conference or going to win the conference tournament, getting an at-large berth is just so tough. And if you are that good, you are winning the conference this year. So I think it's going to be
Yeah.
hard for the conference to get more than 2. I'm hoping for those 3 that are there right now, but I think one might get pushed out as we get further down. Hoping it's not New Mexico. But to me, I think that the depth of the Lobos might actually become an issue, because to me, they only have 2 solid bench players, as I mentioned, in Rock and Tenet, whereas San Diego State and Utah State seem to have a little more experience and depth, and that might be the separator to me. So I think they are a step under those 2 schools. but I think they have every chance to win the regular season here because Coach Eric Olin is just a different monster than we've ever seen, and his focus is something different, and I have faith in what he's doing here.
Yeah, he's been very impressive. I mean, he's no doubt in the running for coach of the year. I mean, there's obviously some several other candidates that you could throw out there, but man, he's been just absolutely he did terrific in year one out there in Albuquerque. I got the Mountain West slate pulled up for today and tomorrow. We got two games. I have to say, just a very good slate. You got the two rivalry games with UNLV and Nevada, the Fremont Canyon rivalry. And then you got, Colorado State and Wyoming. We should mention last time as Mountain West members, of course, CSU going to the Pac-12. This game is in Laramie on Saturday evening. I think Wyoming has got every chance to win that game. We've seen some crazy results over the years, and in that game in particular, I remember CSU was up like double digits with like 2 minutes left and lost the game in overtime in Laramie. So that game always provide some good feistiness to it, just given the geographical elements and how much those two teams hate each other. I think Boise State GCU tonight, Ricky, I think is a must-watch TV game for anybody that follows the Mountain West. And if you're just a college hoops fan, you have to watch this game. GCU is going to be on fire tonight. Boise, I could tell you, flew out on their charter Tuesday night immediately after the SJSU game. So they've been in Phoenix since Tuesday night. I know they were practicing at like a Phoenix Suns practice arena and doing all of that other stuff on the side. So they're excited to that. We'll see how they do in that environment. But I think Boise's so hot right now. They're on a 5-game heater, and especially with their second unit coming alive, I think they finally found their identity with their paint presence with the forwards. I think Boise's going to give GCU every chance, for an upset here. I know the odds makers don't view it as an upset here. I mean, it's practically a coin flip and a pick 'em, but I have to say, I think Boise might win this game tonight.
Yeah, I think GCU had 2 starters out in that last
Yeah,
game against Nevada. We can see if they're back here, but I think GCU a little undermanned, like you're mentioning, and I'm feeling a lot better about the Broncos, whereas 2 weeks ago they looked like one of the worst teams and worst
you're
coach
dead in the
teams
water.
in the whole conference. So, yeah, it's funny how much a few weeks can change things, and I think the Broncos behind Fielder are playing a lot better here.
What do you make of that marquee game? It's like a 9 a.m. body clock game for San Diego State. Obviously, that won't matter because I saw, Mason Falslev, immediately after the Wyoming blowout, he went up to, one of the guys, recording on their iPhone. He says, "Hey, Saturday, right? Like they have this game circled. Both teams do. The game's at the Spectrum Center. Magoon Guath for San Diego State is out. He's already been ruled out. And, ironically, this is the place where he got injured last year and got shut down for the year. SDSU's been playing without him for like the past, week or two now, but this is a different environment. And I think Utah State, I mean, a week ago versus CSU, they almost look like you had to sell the stock on them. And they really rallied in that second half last Friday. I think they've got their mojo back. I think they're going to take care of business here. I don't think they're going to run away with this one. I think this has got one possession game written all over it in favor of the Aggies.
Yeah, this is a tough one. You gotta like what MJ Collins is doing, the transfer from Vandy, coming over, being one of the leading scorers for the Aggies, one of the leading scorers in the conference for that matter. Miles Byrd, offensive game for San Diego State has been a roller coaster ride, but one thing for him that always shows up is that defense. He makes an impact there every night. So I think even without Guath, I think San Diego State matches up well because Utah State doesn't really have a lot of good big men other than Templin down there to bang with some of the guys like a Pharaoh Compton, a Miles Heide. San Diego State, like I mentioned, just so much depth on that team. I think early in the year, it took them some understanding to know the minutes and roles they were going to play. BJ Davis was the leading scorer for most of the year. I think Reese Dixon Waters has kind of surpassed him here, but all those guys seeming to fit in. I'm going to take San Diego State in the road on this one. I just feel more confident with them as a total team right now.
Yeah, I mean, that if there's team
You could go either way.
can there's one team you can trust on the road, right? It is San Diego State. I don't know. I saw some ridiculous numbers where it's like San Diego State on the road in the last 5 years versus everybody else. And the numbers were pretty jaw-dropping. I mean, defense travels. I think that's why you've seen GCU kind of show up on the road as well, because they got some terrific individual defenders themselves. But man, that's going to be one heck of a game. I mean, you see, it's on CBS, and for good reason, because I mean, those two teams don't like each other either. I mean, you hear Falslev talking, and between Bird and Falslev, I mean, between those two matchups, I mean, that might decide. I don't know if Bird's in Player of the Year conversation right now. I probably wouldn't put him that far up, but I mean, he's got a chance to, I guess, reinsert himself into the conversation if he goes berserk like how he did last Saturday versus UNLV against a high leverage opponent. So, I mean, that's going to be a big one. Both teams got depth. Both teams can, obviously guard. Very interested to see, Utah State's matchup zone against, just San Diego State. San Diego State's not going to zone you either. That team only plays man because they're so good at it. So I'm just just intrigued to see the chess match there with Calhoun and Dutcher. Both teams will be ready, and that place is going to be on fire, man. I mean, it's going to be awesome. So can't wait for it. And we'll see how this thing goes down the stretch here, because the chase is starting to become wild.
I gotta ask you, Nick, before
Yeah, what do you got for me?
I move out here is, who do you like as the conference champion right now out of the teams that sit up at the top? Who do you think has the best shot?
Man, I mean, you certainly got to look at the schedules. I'm trying to think on the top of my head because I don't got everybody in front of me here, but
So I
I
don't
mean,
think Utah State and San Diego State haven't played at all yet. So they
right.
got there too. New Mexico has 2 versus Utah State and 1 more versus San Diego. So I think they all 3 of those teams actually had the easiest schedules to start conference play, and now they're really getting into the meat of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard without those schedules up, but it had to ask you.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna probably say Utah State ultimately finds a way to get it done. Now, I'm not speaking that with confidence at all. Because I think Utah State's gonna take care of business tomorrow. Uh they're a chance to go back and win again at Viejas Arena. I remember last year they won on in the game that they shouldn't have won. I remember Tucker Anderson hit a 3 from the right wing to steal the game, and it really shocked the entire Mountain West landscape. Um, New Mexico and Utah State's going to be a really good game at the Pit. I think next Wednesday, that's a game everybody's going to have circled, because I remember that game versus Utah State when they went into the Pit last year, and New Mexico kind of went on one of those runs where the crowd is it's just a crowd run, right? Where the building just explodes. And then here comes everybody, the Lobos rip a 10-0 run, right? Like how we saw in that GCU game. But man, Utah State, they're just so hard to kill on the road. And that's a team that I feel like can just travel. I mean, Falslev is just so consistent in those crazy environments. And, Nevada came pretty close the other night, a week ago, where, I think that final score doesn't really tell the story per se on, how close that game really was. So, you know, I like Utah State to, find a way to get a road win in one of those crazy environments, while at the same time defending their home court. But I have to say, there's pay attention to what we see here in February as we flip the calendar to it, because we've seen it now the past 2 years with Colorado State and New Mexico, where those teams just get extremely hot starting right now, and they roll with it all the way to March. And it doesn't really matter. Like, they're so hot, they're playing with so much confidence. And next thing you know, they're winning, 3 games in 3 days in the Mountain West tournament. So something to monitor for just, I guess, all everybody's involved here. Keep an eye on those hot teams. And I think, that's why I got a lot of respect for Boise going on the road to win tonight at GCU, just because they are playing with so much confidence. But yeah, Utah State, not too much confidence. That's the long answer for you, Ricky. But yeah, I'm very excited to see where this thing goes. Before we end things here, just kind of want you to give a shout out to everything that you're doing. Where can people find your work? For your podcast covering Lobo hoops, man.
Sure, I'm just an old Lobo graduate, doing my best to keep up with everything hoops. It's called the Cherry Heat Check. Focus only on New Mexico and Mountain West basketball. I really love the conference as a whole and follow it very closely, and just grateful to meet guys like Nick that get me involved with the conference stuff as well. So focus on Lobos, but really have a good knowledge of all the teams and do my best to keep everybody updated on that. So thanks, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I know you're going to be in the building tomorrow night for SJSU versus New Mexico in San Jose. I'll be there as well. I just got the green light while we were here that the broadcasting the games. So go ahead and that's that find out stuff last minute. You just got to go run with it. So I'll be on the air tomorrow night for that game on ksjs.org and 90.5 FM. Should be a good one, and we'll see what this game provides. I mean, obviously the injury report's significant. But regardless, you already know, Ricky, I'm just a college hoops fan. I cover SJSU, but man, I just love to get all the eyes on all these in person, and coaching's good all around in this league, and there's some terrific talent all around as well. So very intrigued to watch this one, and we'll most definitely be talking pregame tomorrow night in person, man.
Definitely, I'll come over to bother you, Nick. I won't be sitting on press row this year with you big dogs, but hopefully I'll make my way back someday. But yeah, I'll come bother you. I will maybe bring my earpiece so I can listen to you from within the arena, because I do like your call on the games there. Good energy, and appreciate your partner on there as well. So um, hopefully Lobos can do it. But like you said, anything can happen. And I think that's why we love this conference and these teams, because you don't know, especially at these late night games. It seems to get wilder the later these Mountain West games go. So I'm looking forward to being there and seeing what happens.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Ricky Thompson, you can find all of his work at the Cherry Heat Check podcast covering Lobo hoops. That's going to do it for us, here on the live edition of the Sports Segment. Wanted to do this one live since we did have a guest that came on live. It was very convenient, but also just so, we could just, go up and down and, you know, I don't have to do all the uploading, and you can get some live and raw reaction of the games tonight if you tune in right before then, and you know just to make things easier, just to get that out on the on the interwebs, if you will. So always appreciate Ricky for hopping on just to talk Mountain West hoops, and to preview San Jose State, New Mexico. And he'll be live and from the game on location. I'll be there on courtside broadcasting the game, and well, we're gonna see how this thing goes. But a terrific slate of hoops tonight in the Mountain West, and of course tomorrow, marquee game, San Diego State, Utah State, should be a blast to watch. That's gonna do it for me here on the live stream here. Once again, I'm your host, Nick Urias. Be sure to subscribe wherever